Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to the channel. This is the People's Money Network, and today we are here to get lit. Financially lit. Turret. You know, financially lit. Just pay attention and stay tuned.
Points there. Both the virus and inflation, top areas of concern for the public, and some 86% say they've taken at least one step to combat the rise in prices. The most frequent means you can see there: reduced spending on discretionary items like eating out. But respondents also said they were driving less, traveling less, and saving less money.
We start off with a late-day sell-off in the markets. The S&P tumbling in the last hour of the session despite trading in record territory for most of the day. Meantime, two-year yields spiking to their highest level since March 2020 after Fed Chairman Jay Powell was nominated for a second term. The news also sending the dollar rallying, the Dixie at its highest since July of last year.
The growing gap between rich and poor Americans is one of the biggest challenges facing the country. Get this, the richest 1% controls more wealth now than at any time in more than a half century. And that's a concern cited by every leading Democratic presidential candidate. And a recent bipartisan survey found that most Americans, 61%, think it's a problem.
Crypto is on the verge of revolutionizing traditional financial systems. Advocates say it has the potential to make the current financial system more efficient, accessible, and faster. We're talking about decentralized finance, or DeFi.
So what does it all mean? And most importantly,
what's in your wallet?
if the answer to that question is not what you want it to be, no fret, my friend. The visionary is here for you. We are here to change all of that right here, starting today.
Show me the money.
First, gotta take care of the YouTube business. If this video, and only if this video, has something in it that is of value to you, please show your support, press the like, subscribe to the channel, and look forward to what we have coming in the future. We want to give you the highest, utmost value going forward and from here on out. And also, make sure to watch the video all the way through, because towards the end of this video, I'm going to give you 3 steps, actionable steps that you can start and implement today to get you on the path to becoming financially free. So let's get into it. You know, it's my goal with these videos and with this channel to help you get to a point in your life where you're able to use the financial literacy that you have as a pillar, as one of the skill sets that you have in life to take you to whatever level you want to go. In order to master anything in life, you first need to understand what it truly is. So in this case, what is money? What is the money system? What is the economy? You know, how can we answer certain questions like, how come the wealth gap is what it is? You know, how can some people live in 40, 50, 60 million dollar mansions while others are struggling every day to find a meal? How is it that the stock market seems to be doing so well, but there's no reflection of that on my own paycheck? So in order to get into that, I first must start with a history lesson. So I want to take you on a little bit of a journey from the beginning of time to give you a good understanding of how this system works and give you a point of reference that you can go back to in a very simple context so that you will be able to apply some of the principles of what we're talking about to what's going on today. So the idea of money, the money system, the financial system, the economy, all of those terms are basically synonymous, especially in the way that everyday average people use them, right? Because at the end of the day, you're really just concerned with being able to do what you want to do and having the financial support to do it, right? So that's really the bottom line. So what is that system all about? Well, going back since the beginning of time, the system of money has been around from the very beginning. However, the actual invention of the term money, or what money ultimately became didn't come around until around the beginning of civilization, around 6,000 years ago. So before that time, there were systems that evolved naturally. And it basically came down to this. The earliest humans on the planet realized very quickly that the primary goal or the primary necessity of everyday life was to simply survive. And they also came to realize just as quickly that in order to survive, they were going to have to work with each other. So in order to get through all of the elements, the animals, the different things that were a threat to humanity, they were going to have to work hard every day, and they were going to have to work together. So over time, after doing this work and realizing, what needs to be done, they started making observations. They realized that some people were better at some things and other people were better at other things. And so they began to realize that in order to survive, they had to rely on others in order to get certain elements of their actual survival. For example, there were people who were going to be very good at fishing, for example, and others who may have been very good at hunting, and others who may have been very good at botany, learning about the plants and which ones were poisonous and which ones were edible and so on and so forth. As they all began to realize these different skill sets or talents that each other had, they began to trade. This idea of trade that began organically is something that is at the core of what the money system is even to this current day. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But while they were learning to trade, they also realized that not only were they surviving, but as more and more people were populating the earth, and as more people were, developing their own skill set, they realized that not only were they surviving, but also they were increasing their lifestyles. And so it became evident to them that the trade was necessary and was beneficial for the evolution of mankind, not only for survival, but also for standard of life. So they began to do a lot more trade, and tribes formed, and different tribes became experts at whatever they were working, or different tribes became experts at whatever things they were good at, and they traded with other tribes. So it quickly became evident that they were going to have to figure out some sort of system, because if the person who is the expertise, the person who's the expert with fishing would have to figure out how much of their fish would they be willing to trade for some other item, like let's say someone who was hunting buffalo, for example. What was that trade going to look like? How many fish would it take to get a buffalo, or vice versa? And then there were all these other products that were coming into existence, because again, people are figuring out what they are good at, and they're increasing the standard of life, as well as new things to help with survival. So they move along like this, and they realize a system called bartering is what they can use to implement this trade that they have been doing organically. And so the bartering is the first concept of money. It's the first apparatus in between a trade. So it's easy to say, okay, I have a bunch of fish, you have a bunch of buffalo, and you have plants, and you have lumber, and so on and so forth. And so they come together and they say, hey, I'll give you 20 fish if you give me one of your buffalo. I'll give you one of my pieces of timber or lumber if you give me 20 of your fish. And so on it went. And so this bartering system worked out pretty well. As tribes moved around, they were never really in one place for too long. And that was the system, that they would move from one place to another and they would find a tribe for which they could trade with. And the trading mechanism was through bartering. So bartering was the first official money system that we have on record. Fast forward, people start to settle in places and people start to form civilizations. But first they kind of get into smaller communities, and what they do is they create places where they can continue this trade. And so now you get an idea of a central market, right? The central market is the place where people are coming to one place to do this activity of trade. So no longer do tribes have to travel from, one place to another place and travel miles upon miles to get certain things. All of the people who have something to trade come to one central location, but they still are doing this bartering system. So as time goes on, civilization gets started, and people realize that they're going to need a little bit of an easier mechanism to facilitate this trade. They still want to trade, but they need an easier way, because you can't say bring your whole cattle of buffalo and whatever other animals you have. You can't bring all of your fish. You need to figure out a better system in order to make trades. So in comes the next kind of evolution of this system, which is called currency. Currency comes on the scene right around the beginning of civilization, around, like I said, around 6000 BC. And what people would do is they would get something that has some sort of intrinsic value, meaning they would find something that everybody in that civilization would find use out of, whether it was to trade with or whether it was to make some sort of utility out of it. For example, the majority of civilizations created coins out of metal, because metal was of high use to most people during this time in civilization. Most people would use iron, for example, to make tools, people would use iron to make tools. They would use it to make pots and all sorts of different things that they would use it for. Therefore, they would take the metal and they would turn them into small little coins that were easy to carry, and that was something that you can assign a value to easily, and you can trade it, because the coins were also able to be weighed. You can figure out the value of the metal based on how much of it was based on its weight. So it was easy to cut little coins out and then weigh them to have a value. So with this new currency system in place, now people have a much easier way to continue what had evolved, thousands of years before, which is trade. So now people are trading, and it's a very easy thing. But now you have more inventions happening, more population growth, more people coming in, more products coming into the market. And this idea of a market really starts to take form around that time. So, and all of this is going to come together, I promise you. Just stick with me, and remember, at the end of this, I've got 3 steps for you to get started. So just bear with me on this.
Cool beans.
Cool beans.
Cool beans.
So as people come together and they're trading with these new currencies, and by the way, there were different currencies around the world. Some civilizations use rocks some used flowers. It really all depended on that particular group of people and what use they had for the item that they were going to use as currency. But the bottom line was whatever they used had some sort of value because they could use it for other things, as well as they knew it was a trading mechanism that they were able to use. So as people were using these coins, a couple of things happened in the establishment of the market. And you hear all the time today, the market. What's the market doing, right? It's a very important concept. The idea of the market is the central location where transactions can happen. And by transactions, we're talking about trade, right? Because that's the center of all of this system, even today. It's trade. The transactions that are happening in this market are now having a way to be recorded. So in the beginning, there weren't computers and there weren't a bunch of fancy machines to keep track of all of the transactions. But what they did have was a central location where people can talk with each other and people can negotiate with each other and people can record what's going on. And that's all a market is at its core. So it would be something like this. You go into the market and you might have products for sale or for trade, I should say, and your other people may have products for trade as well. As you go into the market, you have the currency that will facilitate the trades. So let's say you decide to go and get some fish. You go over to Marty's Fish. Okay, Marty has a booth and he's selling his fish. He's going to sell you 2 fish for 1 currency coin. Okay, 1 currency coin, he's going to sell you 2 fish. When that transaction happens, a couple of things transpire at the same time. The currency allows for the immediate transaction. It allows for Marty to say, yes, I'll give you the fish, and it allows for the customer to go home with the fish. That's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is a record is made right then and there in the market. And that is a record of the price of fish. So Marty is charging 1 coin for 2 fish. That's the price right now. So as the customer walks around or goes back into the community and people see that they have some fish, the people say, hey, where'd you get that fish? I want some. I think I want to get some. And the customer that bought it says, well, it was over there, Marty. Marty, he comes to the market every week and he had it over there. And I paid 1 coin for 2 fish. So that is the price. And now that circulates. Word of mouth was very big because they didn't have anything like social media or anything like that. So that's the price. So anybody who wants to go buy fish now understands what they need to get or what they need to acquire in order to get some fish. So if they want to get 2 fish, they're going to have, if they want to get 4 fish, they're going to have to get 2 coins because the price has been established and it's circulating already in the market. Okay, so the price is there. So it also creates a future record or a prediction on what the price of a certain product or item is. So the market and the currency, it creates a 3-part system, if you want to call it that. It creates a 3-part mechanism. One is it allows for the transaction to happen right then and there. 2, it creates a record of what that transaction happened, at what price it happened at. And then 3, it creates a future of what is to be expected. Therefore, other people who wish to enter the market, understand what they have to get. So the value of money is going to be, the value of the currency is going to be tied to what people want to acquire in order to go into the market and make purchases. So it's a system that's starting to come together, right? So fast forward, and population grows, technology grows, and things get much more complicated. But the underlying system remains the same. The underlying system meaning that every time a transaction happens, and by transaction we're talking about trade, every time that happens, you have three things that occur simultaneously. The transaction gets to happen in real time, a record of the past is being recorded, and also the future is being recorded. And that still happens today. So let's bring it all the way up to right today where we are. Things are much more complicated because today there are almost 8 billion people on the planet and growing, which means that for every second that goes by, there's an almost infinite amount of transactions that are happening. So every second there's a trade going on somewhere in the world, which makes it very, very complicated to keep track of. But at the core, it's the same thing as when the hunters, 100,000 years ago, would trade with the fishermen. And each one of those trades created an economy. The same thing is true today. Every time one of those transactions happens, which are an almost infinite amount per second now, it creates an economy. So what we call the money system or the economy or the financial system, it's an aggregate of all of these trades that are going on. But since it's so complicated today, we have systems in place. For one, we have entities that have formed amongst people, amongst the humans and the civilizations. Over time, they created governments, corporations, organizations, ways to form groups so that certain things can be accomplished. And with that comes regulations of what types of trades can happen at what time, or what are the circumstances to which a particular trade can happen. So that adds into the natural evolution of what this system had been and then what it is now. It's like a combination of what is regulated as well as what has happened organically in the markets. And there's always like a jab and flow to it. It's always kind of up and down, which is what happens when you see things like stock markets going up and down and things of that nature. It's all about the fact that we're always trying to balance between how much intervention we're going to do when it comes to what the system is doing organically. And it all makes more sense as you study. You have to study, and like I said, my goal here is to open your mind, to open the conversation, and to get your mind moving in the direction that it needs to move in to make it easier. Because again, at the end of the day, it's all about trade transactions. So that means whether a company trades with a company, or a government trades with a government, or a person trades with a person, it's all the same. It all goes into one big calculation. It adds up together, and it's what we call the economy or the global financial system. They're all synonymous terms when it comes down to what it means to you and your final, what goes into your pocket, right? So today, what is different from thousands of years ago is today we no longer depend on the physical currency that was dependent on those many years ago. Today we work with something called fiat currency, and It's a little bit different in that it does not have a useful value, meaning that we don't have anymore where we can take our money and transform it into something for some other use the way they did with metal back in those days. But still, it's something that still has intrinsic value, but for a different reason. The reason the fiat money has, or currency I should say, fiat currency has intrinsic value is because of the belief in the central system that creates the fiat currency. Now stay tuned and make sure you subscribe, because we're gonna have a part 2 to this video in which I go much more into detail about fiat currency and the central banking system here in the United States and how it works. And it also works very similar around the world. So make sure you check out part 2 to this video. But for now, just understand fiat currency is what we deal with today. And we are used to, in the United States and in many countries, paper fiat currency. So if we look in our wallets and pull out some cash, most likely it'll be the paper dollar forms. And we do have coins still, but for the most part, it's any real spendable cash is the paper money that we keep in our wallets. But the majority of the money that's actually in existence is digital. So we're actually at quite a interesting time in the evolution of the system, in which we're coming to a point where it's moving to become all digital. And the fiat paper money that we know, or the fiat digital system in the computers, is changing to a decentralized system as we go forward. All of that said, it's very important for you to understand kind of the evolution of it from the beginning of time, so that you understand that at the core it's still the same thing. No matter what currency it's going to be, it will always be the facilitation of trade between human beings. Whether there are 10 billion trades per second or whether there are 1 trade per second, it doesn't matter. There will be a system in place to keep track of all of those trades. And remember, there are 3 things that happen. 1, the currency facilitates the trade. It allows it to happen. 2, it records the price. And 3, it also makes record or makes note of the future price, giving the market or anybody who wants to enter the market an idea of what they would need to do to be able to purchase things in the market. So that's just as important as, future values is just as important as evaluating past values. So hopefully this will start to resonate. And again, I just want to start conversations here. Please, if you subscribe to this channel, you will get more information from me, and I want to be able to open up conversations amongst you and your peers to be able to talk about these in very, very important concepts, because I feel like we have a lot of talks about money in the sense of what you need or what you don't have, and what you're trying to accomplish, and not so much about what it really is. Because I promise, if you understand what it is, it's a whole lot easier to play the game, to be able to acquire more of it. In other words, you want to take it from the markets and put it into your pocket, right? That's the goal of this whole thing. So that being said, now we got down to, what does all of this mean for me? You're like, yo, the visionary, I mean, that's all good and everything, but we're not sitting in class anymore. Like, how does this affect me? I'm with you. I got you. So listen, here's where it comes down to you. Again, the name of the game is to move the money from the market to your pocket, so that you can do whatever you want to do with it, and you can play that at whatever level you want to play that at. I'm going to give you 3 things that will apply to any type of situation you find yourself in as it pertains to money, as it pertains to the money system. All right, you ready? Before we even get started, I've got a challenge for you. I want you to go right now, find a pencil or a pen, or get on your computer and open up a Google Doc or a Word document. And I want you to write these things down, okay? These things that we talk about next, I want you to write them down. That's my challenge to you. Because not only am I just telling you these things, I want you to write them down, research, put them into some sort of practice or some sort of implementation into your life starting now, right now. All right, I'll give you a minute. Okay, you're ready now. We can get to it. Number one, the first thing you need to do when it comes to taking the money and moving it from the market into your pocket, the first thing you need to do, you need to figure out what are your, what I call tradable elements, okay? What are your tradable elements? This whole time on this video, I've been talking about transactions, trades. I've been using those terms synonymously, and they are the same thing. What are your tradable elements? Okay, let me give you some examples. For the majority of people who are going to work, they are going to have three main things that I would include in your tradable elements. So these, I'm going to give you sort of a cheat sheet here. The first thing of those three that most people have if they're going to a 9-to-5 type of job is their physical bodies and the labor that their physical body can produce. So having your body, being able to move and manipulate the environment in the biggest ways or in the smallest ways, from you being able to press keys on a type, on the keyboard for the computer, or for you being able to lift up big heavy things and move them around, construction, all the way down to any type of physical activity you can think of. If it concerns moving your body, it is physical labor that you're contributing. Okay, that's one of your trading elements. Two, these are for people that are working 9-to-5 jobs mostly. The second one is your intellect, your mind, your thoughts. So most of the time we translate that into your skills. What are the things that you know how to do? What do you know how to do? What are you an expert at? Okay, what do you have expertise in? That is something that you bring to the job, and it is something that you're trading as a part of your agreement with your employer if you're working, right? You're coming there and you know how to work the machines. You know how to work the computer programs. You know how to work whatever operating mechanisms you need to work in order to complete your tasks at your job. You're able to pull that out of your mind. In higher end or higher paying jobs, they might pay you for your original thoughts. Let's say if you're in a marketing firm and they're trying to figure out how to reach certain target audiences, and they're going to ask you, what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? Or if they're in some sort of product research development, or science. They're going to ask you for your thesis and so on and so forth. So your mind, your skill set is something that you have that you can trade, okay? That you can give to somebody else for some sort of value to yourself, okay? The third part of that series of what people have to trade when it comes to a job is time. So let's just think about it. There are a lot of people who have different skill sets. You can pretty much, let's use an electrician for example. You can pretty much find an electrician all over the place. Some a little bit better than others, but at the end of the day, there's more than one electrician on the planet. I think we could all agree to that. So the question could be, why choose one electrician over another? A part of it has to do with the mind, the skill. That's a part of it. But another part of it has to do with who that person actually is. Is that person somebody who motivates other people? Or is that person somebody who is, brings positive energy and flow into a space? Can they communicate well? Can they do the things that are necessary to move a business forward, right? And so in that case, that person's time is very important. It's a tradable element that person has, because there are several people out there who want that particular person to come be at that location because they like their personality, because they like who they are, they have connections, or a whole number of things as to why that particular person, why do they want you? But whatever that reason is that they want you, that means that your time is valuable, because if they want you, other people would want you as well. So your time becomes a tradable element. So those three things are what most people are used to trading on a daily basis. They go to their job, they provide all of those things to an employer, and then the employer cuts them a check. Fair trade. And that's all good. So the idea is to find what are your tradable elements. Now, what if you don't work and you're running your own business? Well, chances are you're definitely doing all of those three things I just named and much more, right? And usually if you're running your own business, the fourth thing you're probably adding to the list of three is that you're creating some sort of product, which is a physical thing you can trade, right? Or you're selling something, and that physical item is a tradable element that you have control over. And we'll get more into, ownership of things and all of that. There's a lot to cover. So you got to subscribe. You got to follow me. I've got a lot for you on a side note. But that's another trading element. But the goal for you is to figure out what are all of your trading elements, or which ones do you have right now? So back to writing this down. Write down what do you have right now, and then write down what you think you can add to that list. One of the best ways to add trading elements to your list is to think about things that you enjoy doing. I know it's very cliche, but it's very true. To do things that you enjoy doing and to try to maximize those things to make it work for you. Because again, this system of money, it's all about a series of trades and transactions, and that's it, right? That really is the core of it all. So the more things that you have to trade in the open market, whether it be a job or whether you work for yourself, either way, you need to maximize the quantity, okay? Follow along with me here. I'm going through a formula. The first step here, maximize the quantity, the number of trading elements that you have. your time, your labor, your physical labor, your intellect, your mind, your skill set, your inventions, products that you have created, okay? Things that you have written, you write a book, you drew a piece of art, or you're a singer, or you're a dancer, or you're an artist in some sort of way. Whatever you can do that creates something that you can trade with others and they're willing to give you value for it, that's what you want to maximize. How many of those things do you have now, and how many can you get? Okay, that's step number one. Step number two. Step number two is, what is the value of each one of your trading elements? So we went through the first three things, talking about our physical labor, talking about our intellect, our skills, talking about our time. How much are each one of those things worth on an open market? If you are trading those things currently, are you getting the maximum amount of value that you could get on an open market for those things? You've got to evaluate that. You've got to see, is your time worth $20 an hour, or is it worth $100 an hour? And there are ways to figure that out. Okay, you have to work, you have to research, you have to talk, you have to get out there, network, and figure these things out. But it makes the difference. What's the value of your time? What's the value of your labor? How worth it is your skill set to the highest bidder? And that's the other thing. Go for the highest bidder. Okay? And this is just simply if you want to play this game on the highest level. Go to the highest bidder. Okay? Go to the one that provides you the most value. Now, on a side note, sometimes the highest value doesn't have anything to do with money. That's a different conversation. Right now, we're simply talking about the money system. In the money system, make sure you go to the highest bidder to the value of your trading elements. Whatever you're trading, get the most value for it. Okay, that's number two. So, really quick, the formula so far is maximize the quantity of your trading elements. Make sure that goes up. And maximize the value. Okay, let me give you kind of a formula. It's basically, if you're a business and you want to increase your sales, you do two things. You increase the number of items that you sell, and you increase the price that you charge. Simply put, you increase the number and increase the price. That will increase your overall intake. Right? Ready for the third? All right, the third and final thing. Number three. This part is where you need to learn how to manage what comes in. Okay? Bringing it in and then managing what comes in managing it is just as important and maybe more than bringing it in. Okay? So after you bring in the thing in, now you need to learn some management skills. I'm going to leave you today with, and I like to do things in steps because I like to give you something that you can start on and work on today. So there are a couple of things you can start with in terms of managing. Managing money is a very big business. Some of the biggest richest people in the world are money managers. So it's a skill set that you learn over time. I'm just giving you a preliminary, actionable starting point that you can start doing right now today. Organize your income. Organize it. What does that mean? That means put it in official places intentionally. And have an intention with what you're going to do with it. So going back to people that are working, or let me say it like this, people that are trading their trading elements with an employer or a job, going back to that example, that would mean you're a W-2 employee or a 1099. You get the money coming in, that money should go into a checking account. Okay, have a checking account with a budget. Okay, and more about budgets and all of that stuff later. But for now, just understand you need a checking account for the money that comes in to your space. That's the first thing. Checking account with a budget. Also, for that same amount that comes in, you're going to separate some of that money into savings accounts. You're going to split the savings accounts into two parts, a long term and a short term. The short term is your crisis account. Rule of thumb, it's different for everybody, but rule of thumb is that you should have 6 months of expenses saved in this savings account, in this short-term savings account. In this account, you should have 6 months of expenses. What does that mean? Whatever you pay in rent, whatever you pay for a car note, whatever you pay for tuition, whatever you have to pay every month, you should have 6 months worth of that in a short-term checking account. I'm sorry. See, you got to catch me. A short-term savings account. You should have 6 months of it in a short-term savings account. Then in your long-term savings account, that is where you're going to put money for long-term goals, which can also be split up into different time frames, but let's just use the general long-term phrase for now. Things like your retirement, your home that you want to purchase, the college fund for the kids, some big purchase you want to make. Maybe you're getting married soon. You want to save up for those kinds of things. You have a long-term savings account that you put that money in as well. Now, if you're following along with the advice here and you're creating more trading elements for yourself, that means that if you have a job, then you're also going to entertain the idea of side hustles, right? Maybe your hobby, maybe something that you can create something new that you can trade for. In that case, you need to create accounts for that specific activity. So we'll call it a small business that you have on the side. That business needs to have its checking account. It needs to have its 6 months of its bills. Every business has expenses and bills, just like every individual. That company or that business that you're running should also have 6 months of income. Six months of expenses in that account. And then a long-term plan for the growth of that business should be in a long-term savings account. Okay? And they all need to have budgets to them. Okay? And more about budgets to come in future videos. So all of that is what you need to bring together. Okay? Take this knowledge, bring it together, take these 3 actionable steps to get yourself on the road to financial freedom and understanding or having financial literacy. All right, you guys, I dropped some knowledge on you. I dropped some heavy things on you. I hope that you're able to contemplate the things that we're talking about today. Make sure you take these steps, put them to work immediately if you're not already doing them. And if you are already doing them, revisit them, improve on them, and make them even better. Because that's the goal of this whole thing, is that you leave here and you go into the world being financially literate and being on your way to your journey to financial freedom. Okay? We want to spread the word. Please, if I've said anything that works for you, that's valuable to you, please hit the subscribe, hit the like button, leave me comments, let me know what conversations you want to have in the future. And I look forward to spending my time with you guys and moving forward. Thank you so much. Until the next time. Peace.